I wish to thank KHF, Sunanda, and the organizers for inviting me to present my views on sculpture and iconography in Kashmir. Though I'm not related to art in any professional way, my relationship with art is very personal, and so that makes it a little, gives me more freedom and makes it a little intricate. Here we had two speakers speaking on sculptures and iconography in general in Kashmir. The terms that were used were mostly ancient, medieval, and modern. I, as a professional historian, would have preferred pre-modern and instead of medieval. Although pre-modern and medieval overlap, but they aren't interchangeable. Medieval specifically refers to the Middle Ages in Europe, and pre-modern is more broader and gives, which means before modernity, and gives the speaker or the historian or the writer more freedom to include ancient, medieval, classical, early modern, whatever, depending on the context. Therefore, using pre-modern instead of medieval helps us majorly to avoid the Eurocentric periodization. So this is my major discomfort with the title. Before I go into I summarize my views on the art scene, especially when we study pre-modern and modern art in Kashmir. I would like to narrate one story which is a passage from Jonah Raja's Raj Tarangani. It's the story of Sultan Zainul Abidin's visit to the shrine of Sharda, the venerated goddess of learning in Kashmir. In the passage, we are told that the temple of goddess had, which represented the center of Sanskrit learning and knowledge in Kashmir, the goddess had hidden herself. So Jonah Raja writes that the Sultan wanted to visit the temple in the hope of witnessing an epiphany, that Sharda gave no sign of, but when he visited the temple, Sharda gave no sign of presence, and far from granting the Sultan any darshan, there was absence. Now we have a historian, Sheldon Pollock, who interprets this story basically from Jonah Raja, or the absence of image in the passage, as the sign of the death of Sanskrit learning in the Kashmir Valley. I would request you to keep this passage or the story in mind for a while until I conclude my views on the session. Now we had two speakers who have, especially the first speaker, who very convincingly made us understand how the study of sculptures and iconography in pre-modern Kashmir is important, and how the visual traditions, they reveal religion, politics, philosophy, and cultural exchange that actually shaped the region across the centuries. And the sculptures reflect the coexistence and interaction of multiple traditions, Shaivism, Buddhism, Vaishnavism, and many other traditions. So when we study the sculptures and the iconography, basically the historian is actually reconstructing Kashmir's lost architectural heritage. Please consider this word reconstruction here, which is very important, because ultimately it is revealing the cult. We are, through this study of sculptures, we are actually trying to reveal cultural exchange, across South Asian sculptures, as the sculptures show influence from Gandhara, Gupta, Central Asian motifs, Tibetan Buddhist imagery. So the study in that sense becomes very, very, very important. Now, as we see that the art history, it's not simply the study of these sculptures or the iconography, but I think it's also tied to questions of other histories. So it thus makes art history interdisciplinary in that sense. And iconography, or the study of these icons, it also becomes a way of studying pre-modern intellectual history. The study also is relevant because it helps to reconstruct the region's intellectual, religious and artistic history while also illuminating broader patterns of Asian cultural exchange. Now, the study could become more compelling when treated not merely as the study of religious art, but as an inquiry into how a society visualized power, sacredness, memory, aesthetics, and the role of artist that was shaped by constant cultural circulation. Therefore, we must have a nuanced approach that recognizes that Kashmiri sculpture is simultaneously, or any sculpture is simultaneously aesthetic, political, theological, and most importantly, historical. Now, this approach would allow us to map networks of exchange that not only the text alone cannot fully reveal, or iconography is not reduced to simply devotional imagery. And we also have this, it also brings us in mind that the assertion of political, it is also the assertion of political legitimacy, because ultimately the temples, monuments, architectural sites, these were also a mode of exerting the political power and also the legitimacy, political legitimacy. And we have a great example of Martan Sun Temple that was built by, that was established by Laltaditya, and which actually was in a way a statement about the reinsurgence of Brahmanism against Buddhism in northern part of South Asia. So it is crucial to understand the reconstructive role of sculptures, iconography, or for that matter, the study of art from any period. And the field is therefore shaped as much by the absence as by surviving evidence. The iconographic study in the events of lack or fragments of materials that are available, now they become a problem once we study these in isolation. Because the sculptures that were part of the larger temple complex, once they are removed from that site, the sculptures they are worn out, or there is a change in the anatomies that are interpreted by, that when read in isolation can be interpreted differently by the historians once they are removed from the site and once they are removed from the time period that we talk about. History, I would say, is politically sensitive, emotionally charged, and modern interpretations often attempt to appropriate pre-modern material into rigid binaries and narratives. For instance, it can be interpreted simply as exclusively Hindu, Buddhist, Islamic, or in nationalist frameworks. So, in order to resist these simplifications, and we have seen that an artist, or for that matter his work of art, is always intended to resist these simplifications and binaries. So these are overlapping, there are overlapping ritual practices, vocabularies, spaces that should be read as porous boundaries between the traditions, coexistence rather than isolation, and continuity across political changes. So the site, here the site means the pre-modern sculptures or the iconography, is sophisticated in terms of intersections of art, metaphysics, and trans-regional interactions. Now I want to conclude with a story of the same image, and this is the image of the goddess, which is once again absent from the historical sources, but this time there is a historian named Jürgen Haneder who writes that Jonah Raja had unconsciously given an image of the death of Sanskrit learning in the Kashmirian valley. But the idea of a withdrawal of the gods is an image that we also find in Kalhana's account. Here, it is the acceptance of outcasts in religious and court life. For Kalhana, a reversal of the natural order of the conservative Brahminical universe. That is sufficient to assume that the deities had withdrawn from the temples to avoid contact with the outcasts that were allowed into the sanctuaries. There is no reason to assume that many, apart from conservative Brahmins, shared this opinion, and also that this process was thought to be irreversible. Now the same image, once we see that, it is interpreted differently. The absence of the image from the temple is interpreted differently, because this time in 11th century when Kalhana writes, prior to that there was a movement that was started by Abhinava Gupta, the Kola sect, in which all the outcasts were actually brought into the fourfold of the Kola, and they were allowed into the temples. So Kalhana writes this about this event as the goddess, the disappearance of the goddess, because the goddess didn't like this. Why I have started my observations with an image or the absence of the image is that it's all about, at the end, it all ends with the interpretations. So the material that we have can be interpreted differently, and the interpretation ultimately rests in the hands of the historian who is writing about art or about literature. And with this, I think there is a short lack of time. So thank you very much for your participation.